In this video, we're going to analyze some data using Python, Google Colab, and Gemini AI. So I have a Google Colab notebook open. That's your colab.research.google.com. Just need a Google account and you should be all set. So the first thing we're going to do is get some data. So for this, I'm going to use this data for border crossing entry data. And if I scroll down here, you can see there's this CSV file. Now, if I click on the CSV, it's going to start downloading this data. I don't really want to download this though yet, so I'm just going to cancel this. So if I download this, then I could just upload it to Google Colab in here. But since Google Colab basically creates a Linux virtual server, we can actually run Linux commands right here. So typically, if we just write some code here, that's just Python code. But if I start with an exclamation sign, that will be Linux command. And what I can do, I can use wget command, and I'm going to add a space, and then we'll go grab a link to that CSV file. So I'm going to right click on this download and do copy link. And then I'll just go back here and just paste this here. And if I run this, as you can see, that's downloading this file. That's done. So at this point now, you can see the file is located here. I'm going to clear this output here. Now, this particular download just worked out really well from that particular source. Not always is going to be possible. So sometimes you'll try to download it directly, and there will be some security measures to stop you from actually doing this download. So in that case, you're going to just have to download it the regular way and just come back here and upload it right here. But here I could just get this done directly, so I don't have to download and then upload. I am going to rename this file. So I'm going to click here and rename, and let's just call this data.csv. I'm also going to get rid of this extra stuff here. So now we have this file called data.csv right here. So at this point, I'm just going to create another block of code here, and we can generate some code here. So I'm going to click generate, and now we can use Gemini AI to get some Python code for us. So first, let's take a look and see what's going on in that particular data source. So let's just say import data.csv into a data frame. And that will basically just create a Python pandas data frame for us. So here we go. It runs an import, and it did get this download all over again, which we don't need to do. That's fine. We'll correct this. So what I'll do, I'll just grab this import first of all, and we'll just add another code block to make sure our imports are just separate from this. I don't need this comments. I'll take that out. And here is our lines to actually read that data frame. And our file is called data.csv, not this. So we're going to just correct that, data.csv. That's going to read it into this df variable. And then this will print the results. I don't want to print those results. So to keep this clean, we simply just want to read that file into a variable that's short for data frame. So now that we've read this, let's look into that df and see what's going on. So if you look into this, you can see there is about 400,000 lines here, 10 columns. So you can see it gives us the port name, port of entry, state, the code of the port is here. We have the border. So you can see there's US-Canada border here, then US-Mexico border. We have some dates. We have these measures like truck, buses, pedestrians, and then we have value. And then we also have this coordinates of this. I don't really care about this coordinates, so I'm going to just go ahead and delete some of the columns that I don't care about. So I'll just go here and do generate and say delete columns So I'm going to remove port code. I'm going to remove this, and this. I want to get rid of those to make this easy for me as I'm looking through this data set. So I'm going to run this. Now, if we look inside of that df, you can see those columns are gone. So this is just going to be cleaner so we can see what's going on. Now, first, I want to see what are different types of measures or whatever they call this. So basically, see, it can be a truck, somebody entered with a truck, or it's a pedestrian or personal vehicle. So let's see what else is available here. So let's just get unique list of values from that column. So we'll say get unique list of values from measure column. I'll just copy that so I can paste that in a second, but let's run this. So you can see it's doing the print of this, which is fine. I guess we'll print and see what's going on. And as you can see, these are the values. So we have trucks, buses, pedestrians, and so on. So we have also truck containers empty, and we have truck containers loaded. Now, if you wanted to better understand what these things actually mean, you can go back to this source data, which I'm going to link to in this video description so you can get to this. Now, if I open this landing page, see, this basically just explains this data so you can go through this and better understand what's going on. And as you go through this, you can see it gives good descriptions of what is this, and so on. Like, for example, we have truck containers crossing. That includes both loaded and unloaded containers. And then we can look at some things like, pedestrians crossing or passengers crossing in a vehicle. So for example, if you look at this private owned vehicle crossing, this will be number of vehicles basically crossed. So you can say this many cars crossed the border. If we look at this one, passengers crossing in privately owned vehicles, that will be persons entering, meaning the number of people. So this would be number of vehicles and this would be number of people. And that would be the values. So if you want, you can read more into this to see what's going on. But I think you get it. So we have these values. So that was that measure column. Now, if I also want to see like what border options are available in this border column, which we should probably have just two, we can just say from border column, get unique list of values. And that's why I was copying that so I can see what's going on. So yeah, so we have two borders here. That makes sense. Obviously, you can also get a list of unique states or other data. Now let's just get a quick count of all crossings from US, Canada border, and Mexico border. So I'm just going to go here and do generate, and we'll write get total. What is this column called? Value. Let's actually do uppercase V. Get total value by border. Something like that. So as you can see, it's importing pandas all over again. It's importing this file. We don't have to do all of that. It's dropping all this stuff. So it's basically repeating some of those steps, which we've done already. We're going to get rid of all of that. We are just going to keep this part, which is where we get our totals. You can see this is the number for Canada. This is for Mexico. Now, it would be nice to have comma separators here, 1,000 separators, so we can kind of see what's going on here. So I'm going to say use 1,000 separators for values in the report. So let's run that. And once again, it's repeating a whole bunch of steps, which can be annoying sometimes, but not as annoying as having to type all of this code. Here we go. So we're going to group by border and sum the values, which makes sense. And then what it's doing, it's applying this lambda function to do that formatting for 1,000 separators. And then we have this formatted border totals. So I'm going to run this. So you can see now these totals, which is it's printing this variable down here. You can see this is here. I think that's 3 billion as far as I can tell. And this is 8.5 billion. So now we can take this and maybe look at this year to year or something like that. So I can say, well, I'm going to copy the same thing, click generate, paste here. And instead of just saying value by border, I'll say value by border by year. And since I want to do by year, see here, we don't really have year in this data set. So why don't we just create a year column first? So I'm just going to keep this here for a second. I'll just add another code block. And before I run this, I'll click generate here. And I'll say create a year column based on, let's see, date. So we'll just run this. So once again, it's importing pandas, which we're not going to do. Now see, it's converting the date column to date time. I'm not sure if I actually want to convert date column to date time. So that's what it's doing right now. It will basically overwrite. So when it's doing this, df date, that means it's going to take date column and it's going to make it equal this, meaning it's going to overwrite the existing date column with this, which based on what I'm seeing, it already ran this. So let me actually show you what that looks like. So if I go back and reopen this and just look inside of the df, which is our original data frame, see those values we had here are converted to dates basically based on this. And the original is gone. So that's not really what I want. So I would prefer to have a new column here instead of doing this. So the thing is, like, we already overwrote our existing data. So if we want our initial data, we're going to have to re-import this because there's no undo in this, which is fine. I'll just run this line. We'll re-import our data. I'll run this to drop those columns we didn't want to keep. And then we're just getting unique values, blah, blah, blah. All of this is fine. Now, at this point, if I scroll down here, well, before I run this, let me actually show you the df so you can see. So now we're back to our regular data set without changing this. So what I'll do here, instead of overwriting this date, I'm going to rename this date column. I'm going to call it date Python, I guess. We'll just call it that. And then we'll take that column and extract the year out of it and then create this year column. So I'm going to run this. So as a result now, if I go back and run this df, now we have our original date, but then we created this new date and then the year. So now you can see 2024, 2024, then 2025. So now we got our year column. So now that I got my year column, I'll just go back here and this was my request to get total value by border by year. Now we have year column, so we can use it. So I'll just hit enter for it to generate some code. This time it didn't do all those previous steps. So it does, again, do the border by year. Then it's doing the same formatting. I didn't ask it. Oh yeah, I did ask it. Use 1,000 separators. I did ask it, and then it's going to create this variable formatted border years total. So let's run that. So here we go. So we got our US-Canada border here, and these are the years and numbers. Then if I scroll down, we have US-Mexico borders, and then the years numbers. Now, this is not a very convenient way to look at this. Let's just move this borders to columns. So let's say total value by border in columns by year in rows. So I'm going to rerun that. Now this time it decided to redo a bunch of the steps, which again, we don't need to do. So I'm going to take all of those out. Let's see if this works. So we're grouping by and we're unstacking now those results. So I'm going to run this. Here we go. So what it did, it actually did years in columns, borders in rows. It's the opposite of what I actually wanted. So why don't we just go here and change this to year and this to border. In this order, rerun the same code. And now we got this way. So now we have this here, as you can see. And then we have our year to year, and we got our numbers, you can see, for US and Mexico side by side, all the way up to 2025, starting from 1996, apparently. So now let's just maybe make a bar chart based on this. So I'm going to go down here and say, create a bar chart. Let's just do that without actually mentioning what exactly to create it from, to see if it's going to be able to do that. If not, we'll grab the variable and do that. And we'll probably have an issue with this, but let's see. So it's importing the library. So I'm going to cut this and actually go on top. And I like my imports on top. So I'll paste this here, run this. So next time we don't have to import this library anymore. And then I'll scroll back down. This is the code. So as you can see, it's using this border year totals. That's the variable. And if I scroll up, that's this border year totals. This will actually work. I was actually worried it's not going to work because I thought it would pick up this formatted border year total, which in that case, it's just comma separated text numbers. But it actually picked up the original grouped data, which should have original values without those commas and strings and all of that. So let's just run this to see what this looks like. And here you go. You can see our US-Canada border, year to year, US-Mexico. Now, here you can see we can not see the years because they're so close. Let's try to... Oh, interesting. It did add this rotation for us automatically. That's great. But, well, let's assume it didn't do that. Let's actually go on top here and say... what are these? The years would be basically this X label. So let's say rotate X label 45 degrees. Okay, so we got this. We don't need this import anymore because we've done that. And let's just try to rerun this and see what it looks like. And you can see now we turned those years a little bit so we can actually see which one is which. Now, of course, 2025 is partial, so we can just ignore that one. But you can see clearly if we look at this orange one, which is US-Mexico border, we can see that border crossings have decreased from this 2000s until 2011, and then they were going up, and then it decreased 2020 for obvious reasons, and then it's going up again. But it's still lower than what it used to be in like 2000s. And you can see that same trend kind of with Canada. Now this particular one basically includes every single value we have, all the types of crossings. And one of the problems with that could be is like, see, we have like trucks, then we have truck containers empty, which I'm going to assume that that's also a part of the truck. I guess we could get the total for trucks and then all the other types, and we can see if it adds up to like number of trucks. So let's actually do that. That would be an interesting thing to do. So let's just do total value by measure, basically. So what I'll do, I don't need the year to year. So let me just get, well, let me just type it. I guess I was just going to copy paste, but we can type it, I guess. So let's just do get total value by measure, I think the column was called. Let's actually type value correctly. That will help. And then let's say format numbers with 1,000 separators. So here we go. We got our values. If I run this, you can see we have all our totals. And here we have our trucks, well, containers loaded and empty. And then we also have, where's just trucks? There's trucks. So my assumption is that if we add these two together, that will add up to trucks. And if that's correct, then our previous one basically just doubles those values. And just to make sure that this is accurate, let's just take this plus this. So I'm going to click generate for Gemini AI. See, we got our code. Let's run this and see. That's 329,000. That interesting. That didn't really add up to this somehow, even though it's very close. And I suppose what's happening here is that some trucks could have more than one container attached to it. And therefore, the total number of trucks is lower than these containers together. But basically, based on my reading of this, there's a pretty high likelihood here that we're double counting. And that same type of problem I can envision with this here. So we have vehicles and then we have people in vehicles, right? So we have this thing. So we probably shouldn't just sum all these values together to one. It would be probably better if we just grab one of these metrics and just basically get the total for that. So what if I just ask it to make a similar report to this report right here, but we want to get it only for one measure. So let's just copy this report. I'm going to copy that code. So I'm going to click generate and say, create a similar report, but for measure, and then in quotes, I'll do trucks only. And then I'll just paste that code. So let's see what happens. So I'm going to run this. Here we go. We got our prompt and we got our results. It's importing the library again, which we don't want to do. But this is the good part here. So it took that measure and it filters it to trucks. And then it gets us a new data frame, trucks df. And then we're going to take that new data frame and create this report out of that. So if I run this, this should now only show us our totals for trucks. So now if we look at trucks totals, you can see, we can clearly see a whole different pattern. So if we look at US-Mexico border, you can see that over the years, it just keeps going up, up, and up. Now, if we look at Canada border, not the same thing. This is trending down over time. So that's an interesting thing. Now, this is where we're basically just filtering these results. So I should be able to just change this trucks to any value from here, and we should be able to see our totals. So if I was interested in, let's say, personal vehicle passengers, so basically number of people in a vehicle, then we can just go down here and paste that right here instead of trucks. And now we're just going to filter to this and then do the same report. So if I run this, now the text is still going to say trucks value by year. So you can see a whole different picture now. If we look at actually people crossing the border in cars, the numbers are decreasing for both countries. Now here it's going to say trucks value by border because here it's going to say trucks. What I can do, we can take this. I'm going to switch it back to trucks. I'm going to copy this code. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to say update this code so that I can easily change trucks to any other value. And I'll just paste it right here. So here's the new code that I got. And as you can see, it's doing a whole bunch of steps again. It's importing the libraries, which we don't need to do. It's downloading the file. It's dropping the columns, which again, I don't need to do. Oops, and I accidentally may have run that code, which is not good. Well, it's downloading, so I'm going to stop that. So hopefully it didn't get to the parts where it should not be getting to. So at this point we got an error, but let's just run this and see if it works. So you can see this is not working here. It got me an error. And basically we're running this function that says plot measure by border and year, and we're passing this trucks to it. And then it gave us a couple of more examples here for trains and buses. Now it's not working. And I assume the reason this is not working is because when I started running this, it probably reran a whole bunch of this previous steps that I didn't want to happen. And it overwrote a lot of the stuff that I previously basically did, which is getting the data frame and dropping the column. So let me just rerun this, get the frame fresh, run this to get our dropped columns from here. I don't need the unique results, but I could get them, so that's fine. This is the total per crossing. We don't need that. We do need this step where we actually get our years. So that's that. So now at this point, we should have that same DF data frame that has the data actually in it. And let's just run this and make sure this still works. See, it works. Now I'm going to scroll down. Let's try to run our new code. And now see, it actually worked because as I was deleting those lines of code, somehow I ended up running it and I broke my data set. But that being said, now you can see we got our trucks value by border and year. Now, if I change this trucks down here to another value, so let's switch this to truck containers loaded. This would be an interesting metric to look into. So I'm going to scroll down and all I have to do is just replace this. Run this and see now it did actually make sure that in the function here for the title, it's using that name instead of trucks all the time, which is great. But now we can just filter basically to that measure and then get our totals and then present it on a chart like this. And now we can see the number of loaded truck containers. And we can see the pattern of what's happening over the years from both Mexico border, Canada border, etc. And there you go. That's a quick and easy way to basically grab some data, put it in Google Colab and run some data analysis and do some pretty cool things using Gemini AI to write the Python code. And mostly basically pandas is what's being used behind this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.